What is up, Tube users, and welcome back to another installment of fantastically fun games for under $15. Today, we are taking a look at one of the most popular games out there right now, Lethal Company. Now, this is definitely a game that is better with friends. It is really tough to play solo, as you'll see in this run through. And it is a pretty difficult learning curve for this game, but I still think it's super fun. And once you get to know everything and once you understand how things work, the gameplay loop of finding materials, bringing them back to your ship, and just kind of just trying to survive is actually really fun. And the amount of different monsters and stuff you come across are really unique and really terrifying. I think kind of can compare this game to like a Phasmophobia, where you're just trying to find different. In Phasma, I guess you're trying to find evidence, but here you're trying to just find materials. But it does have a really fun, just kind of loop of finding that and exploring and just running away from monsters. You can actually kill the monsters, which I think is another unique thing about this game. And there's just so much to it. So yeah, let's just dive into what makes this game so fun. I really think the first thing that makes this game so fun is playing with friends and the amount of different things you can do with your friends in this game. For example, there is like a monitor in the ship that allows you to kind of guide your friends that are going through these, I guess, are warehouses. I don't know what to really call them, and to find the materials that you need. And they can, on the monitor, you're able to see where stuff is before usually the people inside are able to see it, and they can see monsters as well before you're able to see it. Sometimes they are just there, but it is super cool to just kind of have that monitoring system just to play things safe, because this game is very dangerous. A lot of the monsters are super dangerous. Although some of them are pretty easy to maneuver around, I typically just tend to, once I see a monster, I'll try and avoid it at all costs, but most of the time that doesn't work out so well, and I'd rather just, especially solo, you want to just play your life and get out of there safely, rather than just trying to go for as much scrap as possible. I really do also like the upgrade system in this game. There's not like, it's pretty basic what you're doing, right? You're just going in trying to get scrap and stay alive, but the amount of different upgrades you can get and what they do for you is really interesting and unique, I would say. Like, I mean, just a basic thing like a walkie-talkie is super useful if you're, especially if you're using the in-game voice chat, which I highly recommend, because not only is it pretty funny, but it is it makes for a different dynamic for the game, right? You mainly can only talk to people that are in your proximity, but then once you get a walkie-talkie, you can communicate to someone who's like in the ship, just kind of keeping an eye on things. So I really like that kind of gameplay. And then there's a plethora of different upgrades you can get, and it's super cool to see all these different and weird things that really make this game kind of unique. And I think another thing that makes this game super unique compared to anything else is the enemies that you face in this game. They are just so odd, so random, and so extremely terrifying. Like any enemy that I come across in this game, like that first run, I just came across an ooze, which is probably the easiest enemy, and I just would rather not deal with it for the most part. So just having all of that, and just there's so many others. There's so many different ones that each have unique mechanics to them that really make it interesting and fresh each time you go in. The gameplay loop, I mean, is kind of, you would think it gets kind of repetitive, just going in, finding scrap. You're kind of going into the same maze every time. But I really think that different enemies you encounter and how you have to deal with them makes this game super fun. And I think that's what is like the driving force for this game. And then on top of that, like, I mean, I was talking about the different upgrades that you can get, which also kind of make this game unique. Like, for example, I think one of my favorite ones is the boombox, which, I mean, yeah, you can listen to some jams while you're trying to find scrap, but it's also a good tool to distract different enemies that cater to sound. Like, there's ones that cater to sound, there's enemies that cater to sight, there's enemies that cater to like the scrap that you find and stuff like that. So it's super interesting how each enemy works in this game and the different things you have to do to either avoid them, to distract them, to to even kill them, which you can do to, I think you can do to all of the enemies if you're lucky enough. But I do think that is a really interesting dynamic to the game. And I really think the feel of this game is super unique and interesting. It feels super laid back and comical, but it's also just this terrifying game, right? Like, I mean, for example, when you buy upgrades and stuff, they come down in this rocket or whatever, and it plays. I mean, now we're in Christmas time, so it's playing "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," but it usually plays like the ice cream truck music, and that something just like a little thing like that is just really comical. But then you go into this place and you're facing giant spiders, and it's just absolutely terrifying. And here I tried to go for the kill, and it would probably work with more people, but I just really wanted to try it. And it's just like things like that, like that's kind of just terrifying, especially when you're starting off. Obviously, the more you play, the more you face these monsters and know how to face them, it doesn't get as terrifying, but it stays comical, I think, the more you play. But I think I've gone over most of the good in this game, so I want to go over some of the bad of this game, because there is some bad, and it's still a early access game, so I can't fault it too much, because hopefully they will fix this stuff once it fully releases. And this game is fun enough to buy in early access, so don't get me wrong there. I really do enjoy this game. But yeah, there is some things that I have issues with. One of the first things I think this game is missing is just like a tutorial or something, just to get you a basic idea of how things work. There's like a clipboard on your ship when you start out that gives you an idea, but it really isn't that helpful, I think. I think like a full-on tutorial or something would be a lot better for this game, because there's just so many different things, and especially when you're starting out, you'll be like, oh, I just died to sinking in quicksand. I didn't even know that could be a thing, and now I've lost everything for that run. And stuff like that. It really is frustrating starting out, and like the different enemies, like you don't really know how to deal with them or what you're expecting to get into, so it can be super difficult, and I really think that that deters away from players starting out in this game. I do like the random generation of things, but I think what could be done, especially if you're like tutorializing things, is you can have, there's definitely a difficulty to enemies in this game, and I think for people starting out it would be better, like for your first like run through of the, like getting to the company quota for your first time, to have just the basic and not as threatening enemies to face in these areas, because it is super frustrating, and it's a reason why I haven't played this game as much as like a bunch of other people that I know. It's just there's a lack of what am I supposed to be doing, and how can I do it properly in order to avoid losing money and just dying in general. So I really think that there should be, I would love to see like an increase in difficulty the further you go, rather than it just kind of being random every time. Another thing I'm not completely sold on is the scanning for items. So whenever you go into these warehouses, you're scanning for different scrap items, and it's super weird, the stuff that you're trying to find and the stuff that you're able to pick up. But I really don't like the idea of having to just kind of spam the scan button, because the scraps can be basically anywhere. I would like it to either just pulse automatically maybe, or just have it when I'm close I can see stuff just nearby. I don't like how it is right now, where I'm just having to spam the scan button and look around to try and find things. So I really hope that it's changed in the future. The final thing that I'm really not a fan of is the randomness of different hazards on moons. I typically just want to play without hazards, because it just makes things more difficult, and I'd rather keep it as straightforward as possible, especially when playing solo. So I really don't like that sometimes every single moon that I have to go to has some sort of hazard that I have to be aware of. I'd rather just, I mean, I get it, hazards are an interesting mechanic to the game, but being forced to go to a hazard no matter what, and not having the option to have no hazards, is kind of frustrating. But I mean, other than that, I really do think this game is fun, and I really hope this game gets expanded on, especially with how popular this game is. I would assume that this game is going to see a lot of updates, and I really think it'll be exciting to see where this game goes, from where it is now to out of early access. And for $10, I really do think that this game is a super fun game to play with friends. Good Christmas present maybe for a friend, and it is really fun. It's not as fun solo. It's pretty punishing when playing solo, but I did have fun playing through this. I really do think the gameplay loop, which is kind of the driving force for any game, right, is just how you're able to keep people preoccupied in your game. This game does that really well, because the loop of finding scrap and the different enemies you encounter really make it fun, even though it's completely random every time. So I really do enjoy that aspect of that game. And despite the bad things that I talked about in this game, I really do think the good outweighs the bad. And the difficulty scale for this game, especially if you know how to play the game, you know what you're doing, going to these hazardous locations, going to the harder difficulty moons, coming across the hardest enemies that you can face, it really does make the game fun and a challenge. You know, I think the reward also for playing on the higher difficulty and getting all those upgrades that you can is really fun, and just the entire aspect of this game of just trying to meet a quota, and like here, if you don't meet the quota, just being evacuated from your ship is really fun, just super comical, and it's really enjoyable, I have to admit. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.